It's story time. The story begins. The words enter your mind. Neurons fire away deep into Imagination Central. There, any adventure can play out. Waves of blooming wildflowers roll in a light breeze. Butterflies flutter across the field, drifting up into the sky on a bright summer morning. You build a Persian palace from shadowy memories. Inside, sitting on his ottoman in flowing silk robes, a sultan speaks to his emissary, his eyes drawn thin as he issues a challenge to his people to bring him a riddle he cannot solve. You enter Storyland. Now you turn your heightened focus to today's storyteller.
Hello, my name is Lorna, and I am a member of Spellbinders of Longmont, Colorado. And I've brought you some stories today. Most of them are about a wonderful spider named Anansi. Those stories are usually said to come from Jamaica or Africa, but interestingly, the stories, even though the names are different, the stories are the same in a lot of folk tales that we have right here in the United States as well. So, the first story that I will share with you about Anansi. He was home one day cooking dinner, making a great meal. It was unusual for him to have his own food in the house. Usually he went around to other people to get it. But he was cooking for himself today, and it was going to be a wonderful meal. There were yams and beans and peas, and the smoke smell coming up was just grand when all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. Wonder who that could be, he thought. He went to the door and he looked out and he didn't see anybody. It's me, Anansi, it's me, I'm down here. And so Anansi looked down out of the window and there was Turtle standing on the doorstep. Oh, thought Anansi, I don't want to have to let him in. He's going to want to eat with me. I don't want to share. I'm not very good at sharing. Knock, 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 knock. Just a minute. And Anansi went back to the door and he opened the door. He said, oh my goodness, there's no one here. And Turtle said, yes, I am. I'm down here. Just look down here. Well, Anansi couldn't pretend anymore. So he looked down and he said, oh, hello, Turtle. Very nice to see you. Oh, Anansi, I've been out walking and I'm so hungry and I can smell such wonderful things in your kitchen. Could I come in and share with you? Well, said Anansi, all right, but you know, the only polite thing to do is you have to go wash your hands before you come in, because it's not nice to sit at the table with dirty hands. And look at your hands. They're so dirty from walking on the dirt. Turtle looked at his hands, and sure enough, they were very, very muddy from walking on the dirt. So he said, fine, I'll just go down to the river and wash them off, and I'll be right back. Turtle turned around and he went down to the river and he washed his friend. He washed in the back. And then he turned around and he walked back to Anansi's house. Anansi, I'm here. I washed my hands. And Anansi looked down and he said, you did? They're still all muddy and dirty. Oh, said Turtle, I guess they are. I walked back and I walked through the mud and I guess they got dirty. Well, you're just going to have to clean them up. Oh, all right, said Turtle. He turned around and went back down to the river, but this time he was very smart. He walked back on the grass, so he didn't get a lot of mud on his hands and feet. And when he got back to the house, he said, Anansi, I'm here, and look, I'm all clean, my hands and my feet, I'm all ready to eat. Well, by the time Turtle had gotten back to the house, Anansi had eaten everything he was cooking in the kitchen. Oh, gee, I'm sorry, Turtle, said Anansi. I just don't have anything left. Oh, well, thank you for the invitation anyway, Anansi. Maybe you'll stop by my house someday and have something to eat. Oh, you can be sure of that, said Anansi. So Turtle went off on his way. And the very next day, as Anansi was going out for a walk, he thought, Turtle said I could stop by his house. I think that's what I'll do. And so he went up to the river, and there was Turtle sitting on the side, on the bank. And he said, "Hi, Turtle." And Turtle said, "Hi, Anansi. Have you come by to share dinner with me?" And Anansi said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. Okay, let's go." And Turtle said, "Well, all right, but I mean, let's jump in." So they both jumped in the river, but Turtle went down to the bottom to his house, and Anansi just stayed on the top, floating, just floating like this. He thought, "Oh my goodness, this is terrible. I put on my very best jacket, but now I'm just floating on the river." Turtle came back up. He said, "Anansi, why don't you come down? Dinner's all ready." "Just a minute," said Anansi. "I know what I'll do." And he walked out of the river up to the bank, and he put lots of pebbles in his pockets. All heavy pebbles. "I'm ready now." And he jumped in the river, and sure enough, he went down to the bottom to where Turtle's house was. And oh my goodness gracious, you should have seen the spread. Clams and shrimp and fish and all manner of wonderful things. "Oh, this is just grand, Turtle. Thank you for inviting me." And Anansi started to sit down, and Turtle said, "Oh, wait, you can't sit down like that." And Turtle said, "Well, what's the matter?" "Why haven't you taken off your jacket, Anansi?" "My jacket," said Anansi. "It's my very best one. I wore it special." "Oh, no," says Turtle. "You don't wear your jacket when you're sitting down as company at someone's house. Do I have on a jacket?" "No," said Anansi. I guess not." Okay. I'll take it off." And so he got up from the table, and he took off his jacket with all the heavy stones in it, and he put the jacket down, and as soon as he did, he popped right back up to the top of the river. And as he sat there on the water, floating on his back, he thought, "I can't believe that Turtle tricked me." And that's the end of the story. Let's see. A long, long time ago, even longer ago than you and your grandmothers, even longer ago than me, when the animals still talked to each other, there was a little girl who lived in a village, and for whatever reason, her mother and father had named her Five. Five, that was her name, Five. It was a very odd name, and she really didn't like it at all, but that's what they named her. When she went to school, the children were not nice to her at all. They teased her a lot. "Ha, ha, 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 here comes Five. Here's high five. Here's low five." She was very, very unhappy. And in fact, she was so unhappy that she got to be rather mean. And when she grew up, she wasn't only mean, she learned lots of spells. She was a witch. And she decided that she was going to make all these people who were mean to her, she was going to cast a spell on them. And the spell she cast was that if anybody in the whole town ever said the word five, they would disappear. Just disappear like that. So you couldn't say five. You couldn't go in and ask the grocer for 5 apples. You couldn't spend $5, because if you did, like that, you were gone. Well, it turns out that in the village right next door lived our favorite spider, Anansi. And as usual, he was trying to figure out a way that he could get something for nothing. So he decided that he would play a trick on all the people who went to market to sell all their good food, their fruits and their vegetables. He went down the road a piece where there was a great big tree, and he wove lots of silk threads, and then he made a hammock, and he hung the hammock on the tree because that's where he was going to rest when he was finished with his work. And then he planted pieces of sweet potato. He put each one in a little hill, he watered it, and then he went back and he sat in his wonderful, wonderful hammock. Swinging, oh, along came Mr. Cow. "Oh, Could you help me, please, said Anansi. You know, I planted all of those rows, and I forgot how many I planted. So could you please go over them and count for me? You can put all your vegetables down right here, and could you please go over and count them for me? And the cow said, don't be ridiculous. You're just such a lazy spider. Count them yourself. And he went on his way. So Anansi went back to his hammock, and he swung a little more, and then pretty soon Miss Rabbit came by. Oh, Miss Rabbit, I wonder if you could help me. You know, when I was little, I was a very sickly little spider, and so I couldn't go to school. And because I couldn't go to school, I didn't learn how to read and write, and I didn't learn my numbers. So I wonder, could you please go over there and count the number of potatoes that I planted, because I just can't remember. Sure, I can do that. And so she went over and she said, just a minute, I'm going to put down all of my bundles here on the ground. These are my vegetables that I was going to take to market, but I can do this for you. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and she disappeared. Well, since she disappeared, there were all these vegetables sitting there. Certainly, Anansi wasn't going to let them go to waste. So he ran real quick. He took them home. He put them in his kitchen at home, and then he went back to where he had planted the potatoes. And pretty soon, a pig came by taking vegetables to market also. And Anansi said, oh, pig, could you please help me? You know, when I went to school, I just wasn't very smart. I tried very, very hard to learn things, but I just never learned to count. Could you remind me how many sweet potatoes I planted over there? And Pig said, sure, I can do that. He took the basket off his head, put it down on the ground, walked over to where the sweet potatoes were, and he said, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he disappeared. Oh, my goodness, Anansi was going to be able to eat for a long time now. He took that home, put it in his kitchen, came back, and the next friend who came by was Miss Guinea Hen. A guinea hen is like a chicken, only it's fancier. And she was on her way to market, and she had all her little guinea hens with her, and Anansi thought, oh boy, she's really got a load there. If I can get that, I won't have to worry about eating for a month. Miss Guinea Hen, could you please come over and help me? I planted these sweet potatoes, and I forgot how many I planted. Could you help me count? Now, in addition to being a very, very beautiful animal, Miss Guinea Hen was also very, very smart. And so she walked over to the hills, and she said, oh, let me see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one I'm standing on. And Anansi said, what? She said, well, you asked me to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one I'm standing on. No, said Anansi, that's not how you count. You have to count them all. Well, I did count them all, said Miss Guinea Hen. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one I'm standing on. Anansi jumped up and down on all 8 of his legs, and he said, that's not the way you count at all. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he disappeared. And he was disappeared for a long time. And when he came back, he knew he could never trick Mrs. Guinea Hen again. The end. First of all, the reason that I chose Anansi stories the first time, before I knew how wonderful they were, was because they were about spiders. And having been a teacher for a long time, I knew that a lot of children are really terrified of spiders, and it doesn't matter what kind they are. They're just terrified of this creepy, crawly thing. And I thought having stories about a spider would perhaps reduce a little bit of that initial anxiety. And when I first meet a group of children and I first start telling them the Anansi stories, we talk about spiders and the fact that there are some that aren't good to pick up and they do bite and that might hurt you, but most spiders are not going to hurt you, but you should always be very gentle and you should always ask somebody, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I started with them. And then after I started getting a few of them, the truth of the matter is I fell in love with him. I just think he's a wonderful character, and the children adore him. And they have reached the point after a few months, for instance, when they've heard maybe 3 or 4 stories about him, that they're just waiting to see what is he going to do now. So that's why I chose them particularly, yes.